Do it.
Sounds good.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dee Lisa. I'm a dream doula.
Hello, my name is Beth Badour, and I refer to myself as the kidney goddess. And as we talk further today, you'll see why I call myself the kidney goddess.
The kidney goddess, and I understand you came to life with one kidney, and then you got another one, and now you're on kidney number two. That's a transplant into you. Is that true?
Well, what happened is I have what's called polycystic kidneys.
Mm,
So as the kidneys grow with the cysts, the tissues do not work very well. So
mm,
eventually the kidney function deceases and you have to go on dialysis and look for a transplant. So I
mm.
had one transplant and then it didn't work. So I had to get a second one. So now I have the transplanted kidney that's working on this side, and I have my original kidney on this side. So I've had my original kidney on my left side taken out because it was too big from the cyst to put the new one in. And the transplanted one on the right side was too ill that we had to take it out. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in between looking for kidneys,
Hmm.
dialysis, I understand, is a big time commitment.
Yes, yes. Well, my story even gets more, what I would say maybe interesting
Well, let
is
me just stop interrupting you then and tell us your story. Tell
yeah,
tell us
yeah,
more, Beth, about
yes.
your journey.
Well, first of all, do you know what assuming means when you assume something?
Well,
Do
I
you know
heard it
this
in a
one?
seminar said this way, don't assume anything because that makes an ass out of you and
Yes,
me.
you got it, girl. So, what happened to me is I'm a physical therapist, and
Mm,
I was working at a nursing home. And when I was working at a nursing home, I took care of lots of dialysis patients. So in the morning, they would have to get up super early and they would go to dialysis and then they would come back to the facility. And it was time to do exercising with the physical therapist and the occupational therapist. Well, when you have all your um, transitioned out of you and put back into you, do you think that you're up for exercising?
no, it seems like it
No.
would be nap time. I mean,
Yes,
hello.
exactly, exactly. So I would just see these people that were super sick.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, I want quality of life. I just don't want quantity of life. So I made the big assumption that's how I was going to live if I was going to stick around. So for many years, I told my friends and my family, when it's my time, I'm done. I'm not doing dialysis. I felt that I was complete in my 50s. I had my family, I had my marriage, I had my profession in physical therapy, and I had done quite a bit in my life that I thought, okay, if God is saying this is my time, it's my time. Well, of course, my kids didn't like that too much. Now, they were young adults at this point in time, but finally I listened to my son and he said, Mom, you have to listen to me. You need to stick around. You're such a bright spirit. We need you here. Hunter and I need you here, and the whole world needs you here because you're just such a bright spirit. So I listened to him this time because he had come to me many times. And I don't know if it's God that you believe in or entities or whatever your belief system is. I believe that God spoke through me, through him, to get to me to really understand it was my time to stick around. And at first, I just was sticking around for my two kids. But just like a diet or smoking, when you're trying to stop something and have a new personality, a new way of being, to stop something and start a new behavior, if you just do it for the other person, it's not going to work. You got to do it for yourself.
Oh, that's such a
So,
profound statement.
yes,
There's so many people who
yes.
do something for someone else
Mm-hmm.
or who
Mm-hmm.
don't do something because
Yes.
someone else doesn't want them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a surefire way to be unhappy.
Yes.
Mm.
So, this is another big thing. I was more afraid of living with this disease than dying. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was like, if that's what meant to be, I'm okay with that. I am not afraid of death. I was more afraid of
Wow.
living with the disease.
Wow.
So I journaled on this as I was staying here on Earth and I was going through the dialysis and all those things. And then I found out we had a kidney for me and I was all excited. And so was the whole family, and my kids were excited. But either on the operating table or after I got up, it had two arteries and they twisted either on the table or off. Because usually you should have one artery and one vein, but I had two arteries. So they twisted. And when they twisted, they cut off oxygen and blood supply to the tissues around the outside of the kidney that's called the cortex. And that's part of the kidney that functions to release the toxins.
Mm,
So they were trying to save that poor kidney, but they realized after 3 months that it had become necrotic and it was not going to get healthier. So I was back on dialysis. And then I was like, this is interesting. I decided to stick around. I got a kidney. But my story's not done. I'm still going through this. So again, I kept journaling on, how I felt, what things I was trying to change, how I thought, my behaviors, my perception of myself, my perception of the world, all these different things, how I treated myself physically. I still was practicing loving myself, even though I had this um, if you want to call it a disability or a disease. I called it a dis-ease because my body was in a state of not being in harmony, not being in balance with itself. So I call it a dis-ease instead of a disease. To me, that sounds more positive than a disease or an illness. And then
yes, I love
find,
that. I
yeah,
love that. So,
yeah,
do you help your clients do that too? It's
yes,
not a
of
disease, it's a
course.
dis-ease.
Ease, yes,
And if you were more easeful, it wouldn't
yes,
be.
yes,
Mm,
yes,
hmm.
yes.
Okay.
Because if we're still here, we're still here. And how we talk, how we think about things, how we behave is all going to affect how our body feels and
Right.
how we feel about ourselves, our minds, our health. Yeah. So I practice speaking in a very positive way, even if it feels like it's a negative situation, because as human beings, we think it's either positive or negative, good or bad. What if you just say, this is my experience? It's not good or bad, but this is my experience. Sometimes it takes that pain or that fear away or being afraid of the unknown.
I love that. I was just thinking about that the other day. Sometimes something is happening in your life you do not prefer,
Yes.
and you can fight it, and you can say,
Hmm.
I don't want this, I don't want
Hmm.
this, I don't want this. Well, it
Hmm.
is happening.
Yes.
Um, and so it's just what is. It's
Yes.
not good. It's not bad. It's my experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And truly, don't you believe we can choose our experience where we are not going to name it good or
Hmm.
bad,
Right.
and we're not going to fight it,
Yeah.
or maybe we're going to fight it, but it's the experience we're having.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful, Beth.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. Tell us more.
Yeah. Yeah. So that talking about, fighting and all that kind of stuff, um, I understand that a lot of people and the marketing around breast cancer and heart disease, and I've been fighting this and I'm surviving. Well, yes, I had to get a kidney so I can survive, but I just choose not to survive. After that, I want to thrive. So for
Yeah,
me, it's just not about surviving in life. How would you feel if all you were doing in life every day was surviving? How does that feel?
it's not bonus. It's not a bonus.
No,
I'm surviving.
no.
Well, and I think a lot of people live that way, don't you?
Oh, I do too,
They're
especially this day and
surviving.
age.
They're surviving. They're
Hmm.
just getting by, and they're happy if
Hmm.
they're just getting by. They
Yes.
can't like there's I was thinking about this deeply recently. I was like if you especially if you grow up in a family where times were hard and
Hmm.
people my age grew up with parents that made it through the depression, and they saved
Hmm.
everything, and they were proud of all the little hacks and the things they could do to
Hmm.
make things work that were really broken, or
Yes.
make things stretch to feed the whole family. And
Hmm.
so growing up with that kind of reality is like there's a proud uh, feeling you get from making do or getting
Hmm.
by, but
Hmm.
it's not the way you can live a free and fulfilled life.
Yes,
It's, I
exactly.
mean, good
Yeah.
if you have to, good, do
Right.
it.
Exactly.
And
Hmm.
then figure out how to get out of that.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
how do you get out of that if you have a kidney that's not functioning and you have to go to dialysis? How often do
Yes.
you have to do that? 3 days a week
Yes,
or
with
more?
me it was 3 days a week, and it's
Mm-hmm.
usually 4 to 5 hours while you're sitting there, and then you have to be put on the machine and taken off the machine. So it turns out to be more like 6 or 7 hours that you're physically there at the facility. So it takes a big chunk of your day, and then you're
And
usually
wow.
exhausted after that.
Well, and then
Mhm.
do you have like a permanent port somewhere they can just plug into
Yes.
you?
Hmm.
Mm,
Mine is here in my arm, and they just keep it in my arm even though I'm not on dialysis anymore. It's called a fistula. But I
mm,
had waited so long to go on dialysis that originally I had to have a port put in near my heart, which is a big risk for infection. So they
right.
could start it right away. But when you talk about a fistula, they bring the vein and the artery together to make it a bigger vessel. And then that has to heal for about 3 months before they can actually put the needle in for the dialysis machine. So it's a
Oh,
big process.
that's so trippy. So you need
Mhm.
dialysis, but you can't get it for 3 months because this thing
So
has to
that's
heal up.
right. So that's why they put the port in so I could get it right away because there's
Oh,
nothing that has to heal. It's just an opening that
right.
they can put the dialysis into. It's different than with the fistula. Yeah. Hmm. But I had
Are
just waited so
dialysis
long.
are dialysis clinics open overnight? It seems like that's
Some
something you
of
should
them
do
are.
overnight. Like if
Well,
you went
that's
at
another
night.
thing. That's another thing. I tried to do dialysis at home with a dialysis machine and do
Mm,
it overnight, right? But what happened is I'm 5'2", and at that point I was weighing around 130. And when you put a pillow size of fluid into my tiny little body with these huge kidneys, it didn't work for me. And I was
mm,
always in pain and uncomfortable. And finally I was told with kidney disease such as mine, that type of dialysis usually does not work. But then you can be on it for 8 to 9 hours at night while you're sleeping or trying to sleep. Well, this machine is going and filtering your body so you
mm.
don't have to go into a facility to have it done. And that's almost every day. Some people can get away with maybe 5 days a week, but mine was every day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a lot. And you know how much materials I had to have at home? The sizes of 2 refrigerators. I had to
Oh,
have material to do the dialysis, all the fluids, all the equipment. It was a lot. So you have a place to store all that.
wow.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Okay, so the first kidney fails,
right.
and then they're like, you got to go back on dialysis, and we
Yeah,
have to rip
right
this.
away, almost right
Did they
away.
rip the kidney out too?
No, they made me keep it. So it's
Ooh,
basically a dead kidney in me that they kept for at least 9 months or so. And
that's a,
finally, there
that's
was,
amazing.
and I know, and think about how I felt having this dead organ inside me that
Pretty
I
poorly, I
didn't
would
want
think.
to begin with, and to some extent. And then I decided to get a kidney transplant. Then I got it, and then it didn't work, and now it's got to stay in me, and it's making me sick. So finally, I had so many problems with it that they finally took it out. They said, you have a choice of doing this, this, or this. Like I could have a bag stuck to my leg and until I get a kidney transplant. They could go in and do surgery on that kidney that wasn't working anyways. It wasn't didn't mean it was going to work, but I wouldn't have to have the bag stuck to my leg, or I could get it out. And I said, you better take this thing out. I'm like, I'm over it. I'm done. Take it out, please. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. then finally I got the kidney that was working, and that was about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And I've had great success with it.
Okay, so take two. And then as far as you know, how long do kidney transplants usually work for people? If they work, do they
Hmm.
stay for a long, long time?
They
10
usually
years?
stay
What?
around 10 years, but it's give and take for everybody. I mean, things
Right.
can happen, where it doesn't work right away, or it can last. I've known people, they say like 25 years they've had kidneys. Now, I'm going to
Interesting.
be 60 this year, so, I'm hoping for the rest of my life this will be it, but who knows? And instead of staying in that state of worry, oh my God, no, I just have the best day that I can every day. And I try not to worry about it because worrying isn't going to get me anywhere, right?
Worrying, I
Hmm.
believe, is
Hmm.
negative goal setting.
Right, right.
Negative manifestation.
That's
What you
right.
think about
That's
is what happens.
right.
So worry, 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 and that
Exactly,
might happen,
exactly. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
seems crazy because the
Yes.
world we live in is so filled with fear and worry that it just
Yes, it
seems like a
is.
normal way of thinking.
Hmm.
But
Yes,
good for
especially
you.
in this culture. In this
So you just
culture.
try to have the best day every day
Yeah. Hmm.
because
Yeah.
you're alive. I mean, you probably do what my mentor Mary Morrissey does in the morning. You're like, another day of life.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yay. Yep. Yeah. So as I was journaling going through this, I came up with a process that has worked for me, that has helped me. First, you have to, well, you don't have to, you can choose to acknowledge where you are at that point in time and knowing that you want to choose something different.
Yeah.
So I had to acknowledge that, I at first didn't want to go through this process. And then, I was here and I was invited to stay. And I knew that I was going to have to make major changes if I was going to continue to stay on this earth and be a happier person, not only for myself, but everybody who's around me. Because if I'm miserable, I'm going to make everybody around me miserable. And then why stay, right? If you're just
And
miserable
you
all
have
the time.
grown sons and you're
Mhm.
married.
I'm not
So,
married anymore. I'm divorced, and I've been
okay.
divorced for many, many years now.
Okay.
Yes,
But at the
yes.
time you first started getting your kidney not working, you were married then?
No, I've been divorced. I think it's 15 years now. It's
Okay,
it's been a long time.
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, 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 yes.
Oh,
Yes. So
wow.
once,
So you
yeah,
went through that whole experience as a single woman.
yes. And it's been challenging. And at first I thought, wow, I don't have a lot of support. But
Hmm.
then I decided to change my story and say, I do have support. And
Yes.
when you change your story, then support becomes available. And the son who invited me to stay here was very, very supportive through a lot of the surgeries. And he stayed right with me and he stayed with me at the hospital, those kind of things. But then, as some other things have happened, the two boys that I have moved to Washington, D.C. in the Navy and to New York City in finance. So my one side of the family that would be helpful is still in Buffalo, and the other side of the family, that's my dad's side of the family, has been down here. And for a lot of it, they have been helpful. And now things are different, and they're no longer willing to support me. But for a
Mm.
long time, I had that support. So now I've had good friends who have supported me, and I find ways to get support rather than saying, I'm an only child, my parents are going through all that. I just say, I do have support and I look for resources.
Yes, because it sounds like one of the learnings that you were gifted with in this life is
Yes,
first of
yes,
all, yes, I want to live.
yes,
And two, oh, I can't just do everything myself. I need help.
yes. And being
And
an only
so
child and very independent, that was something for me to learn.
I bet,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because, and I think a lot of women of a certain age, when they're 50 and older,
Oh, yes.
they're wondering if they do have support, especially if
Hmm.
they're not coupled up, because,
Yep.
people think, oh,
Hmm.
if you have a spouse, then they'll help you. That's not always
Hmm.
true.
No. Mm-mm.
And um, yeah, it's all about the
Hmm.
girlfriends at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the next step is accepting where I was at. Now, I'm not
Yeah,
saying you want to stay there, but if you're in denial of where you're at, no, I'm not that. I'm not that. No, I'm not in fear. I'm not acting this way. I'm not thinking this way. If you're not in acceptance, how can you move forward in life? You're just going to stay where you are with the
right.
same beliefs, the same values, the same attitudes, right?
So you feel like
So,
your beliefs and attitudes had to radically change with
oh,
your
exactly.
health.
Radically. Radical acceptance. Definitely. Because what I was doing wasn't working for me. Yeah.
Your story sounds a lot like, only not. Did you ever have a near-death experience in all of your
No. And
surgeries and
people have
things?
asked me that. No.
It's like, yeah, I want to know if you went to the other side and they're like, go back.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be interesting? No, that's not part of my
Um,
story. That's other people's story.
yeah. Well, yeah, and your
No.
story, what you're saying now about radical self-acceptance
hmm
and sounds a lot like Anita Morjani's path, where she did die
hmm
and she was very ill, and she came back and said,
hmm
her body healed up, and now she's like, I didn't love myself.
Yes.
I didn't love myself at all.
hmm
I loved everybody else, and I was
Yes.
completely depleted, and
hmm
that's not the way I'm
Right.
going to live anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah. Yeah. So from
Yeah, so
there, if you take
accepting
this,
yourself, also loving yourself,
yes.
I
Oh,
imagine.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
most definitely. So then if you decide to take action, if you do the same action, what are you going to get?
The same thing.
Yeah, the same results. So I call it shifting left or stepping left. So that's another radical thing to do is something totally different than what you have been doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if you were brave, if you were courageous, if you loved yourself, how would you act? How would you behave? What would you think? What would your perspective be on yourself, the world, all that stuff? Think about a heroine, that you might have or a mentor. What would that mentor do in this situation? What would the heroine do in that book that you're reading, right?
I love that. And that's a more vivid way to ask the question. If you know you couldn't fail, what would
Yes.
you
What would
try?
you do?
Um, but what would you do if you were courageous? I
Yeah.
bet everybody has an answer for you when you ask them that question.
hmm hmm
Mm,
So instead of living in fear, jumping into that, or maybe just sticking your toe in it and see how it feels to start with,
right.
and then
Yeah.
start doing more and more, right? And then that's where whatever you decide to do, go to a priest, go to a friend, go to a life coach, whoever you think is going to support you through this process.
Mm-hmm.
You might have to try different ways, different people, different methods to get it to support you, whatever is going to work for you. Because if you're trying to do this alone and it's almost like you have a new personality now, right? That's hard to do that's challenging to do just by yourself. Usually takes some support of some sort.
And maybe different people. Because
Yes.
you've
Yes.
heard
Oh,
the
yeah.
theory that
Definitely.
you are the five people you hang around with the
Oh, of
most,
course.
and you probably need to level that up to different five people when
hmm
you're going through a healing journey like that.
Yes, exactly.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. And then that becomes the situation of trusting yourself.
Mm.
And maybe you've never really trusted yourself. You've always, kind of second guessed yourself. So again, sometimes it takes those baby steps to see that once you start trusting yourself, you gain more momentum with that. And it becomes more in the flow or more of ease to the point where now there are times that I can just jump and know that the universe is going to support me and I'm going to be okay, even though I don't know how that's going to happen at the moment.
That's what
I'm just
everyone
going to
wants to
take it.
do.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And you can do that just because of all the self-reflection you've done. And you're like, I know
Mm-hmm.
it worked in the
Mm-hmm.
past. I didn't know where I was going
Yeah.
then. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes years of wisdom and knowledge and experiences. If you
Yeah.
tell this to an 18-year-old that has not gone through so many experiences, that's going to be more challenging for them than somebody who has had 30, 40, 50, 60, beyond years that they've built up those experiences and see, yeah, I've gotten through this. I've lost a job. I've lost a child. I've lost my parent, whatever the situation is. And I've worked through it. I have those tools now. Now, this is the time to start using those tools again.
Right on.
And I'll
Yeah.
be okay. No matter what, I'll be okay. Yeah.
Mm. Trusting yourself. So tell me what you do with your coaching. You help people with all these concepts and more because
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, and you
Hmm.
specialize in people with kidney disease.
Kidney disease and chronic diseases. Now,
Okay.
I like to work with women, and I like to work with women between 40 and 60,
Uh-huh.
but I can work with other people. I can choose to. I don't work with as many men, but I can choose to work with a man that feels, like it's going to be a doable experience for both of us. But you can apply these things to anybody who wants to go through transformation, you know,
Hmm.
the 5 steps of getting to a new place in their life. And, it takes all of it, spirituality and physical, how are you going to change your physical being? All those things, emotionally, all those things. Because if you're just working on one side of it, it's going to help the other areas of your life. But we're, a spiritual being having this human experience. So we need to look at all sides of it. And this isn't just a change in your life. This is a transformation. There's a difference between change and transformation. You can
What is the
change your
difference?
diet. Well, you can like change your diet, but
Yeah.
that's not transforming your life,
True.
right? Right. So change is um, changing where you live, changing what you wear. It's experiential, but it's not a definite significant change in your life. When you're transforming, like for me, I had to think differently. I had to experience life differently, have different behaviors. It's the whole package to be in a new space. You still have your own values and your morals, those core beliefs that you have that work for you, your values, your morals, those kind of things. But even some of your beliefs can change, you know. Your truths can even change depending on what we learn about the world and ourselves. So that's totally
Right.
different than just changing.
So most people think if they're going to work with someone and they have a chronic illness that somehow they're going to get better physically.
That's not
And
always true.
right.
Hmm.
I was talking with someone recently about that very same thing. They're like, well, you want a healing, right? But the healing doesn't always come in a physical form. Sometimes the healing is a spiritual or emotional healing,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
body does not get healed. But still,
Hmm.
that illness transformed you in some profound way.
Yes. Yes.
And maybe you're still alive and you still have it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, ideally, if you're going to do coaching with chronic illness people,
Hmm.
you're going to help them find a happy way to be inside of that body.
Exactly. Hmm.
Mm,
And sometimes it's not always being happy, but it's being in harmony with yourself, having balance, peace, more tranquility. It's not always being on earth, I don't believe, is all about being happy.
mm.
We can strive for that, right? But it's not always about happiness because if you don't have that polarity, how are you going to know you're happy, right?
Yes, you
You're
only know you're
happy all the
happy.
time, right?
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So there has to be that balance, that polarity in the
Hmm.
world.
Hmm. Right. So there's, yeah, there's light and dark, there's
Yes.
happy and sad, there's
Mm-hmm.
vibrant health, and there's
Mm-hmm.
chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so what other kind of chronic illnesses have you helped people with? Um, I know people with MS and
Mm-hmm.
rheumatoid arthritis. I guess you would call
Mm-hmm.
those chronic
Mm-hmm.
illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Fibromyalgia, breast
right,
disease, heart disease, and I'm a retired physical therapist. So I've been on both sides of it.
right.
I've been, which is very helpful when I manage people with chronic diseases because
Oh,
I know
right,
a
because you
lot
can say
about,
this.
right.
This is how you should stand up, honey.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah,
try
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Try this
yeah,
thing. Not
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or I know how
I
to
s-
manage the system too.
right.
And it was a lot for me to understand. And I was a healthcare professional. So somebody coming in here, a layperson that knows nothing about healthcare,
Right.
whew, that's a lot to learn and a lot to experience. Yeah.
Speaking of healthcare, does does the average insurance company pay for a new kidney?
Well, that's very interesting. I was able to get on Medicare because of my kidney disease, not because of my age.
Okay.
So that's something that people can look into. If they're still working, yes, most of the time insurances will help to pay for these things. But again, there's so many changes with insurances these days. Things change all the time. I'm learning right now that some insurances won't pay for catastrophic things like in life. If you're on that bridge that fell into the water and you're in the water and you get rescued, right? You've heard about some of the bridges and everything that's
Right.
been going on in the world.
Right.
They're not going to cover some of those things. So there's constant changes with insurances. Some people can't afford insurance anymore and they decide to go without insurance. So I don't know what those people would end up doing. Maybe the
Mm,
Medicare would pick them up then. So that's
interesting.
constantly changing. But one,
Right.
one thing that's very interesting is when you get somebody who is willing to donate a kidney to you, most insurances will cover for the other person who's donating to get the care, to go through the hospitalization, all those things. So they don't have to pay for it through their dollars or through their insurance. Your insurance will pay for
Oh, it's kind of like car insurance. They fix your car and the car you hit.
it. Yep, yep. And we're blessed with that. Now, the other thing that's interesting is I was thinking about doing medical tourism, and I was thinking about
Hmm.
going over to India and getting a kidney. When I called Medicare and I said, what if I go and do this? I'm hearing really good things from the other physical therapists that I work with. I'll go over there and I'll be treated like a queen over there. And there's very good hospitals in India, I heard. So I'm like, well, that's interesting. I love to travel. They said, no, we won't pay for it when you get back. Most insurances won't pay for it because you got the kidney outside of the States. So they don't want to care for it because they didn't supply you with that kidney. They didn't do the operation. So they don't know the quality of the kidney or the surgery to begin with, and they don't want to take responsibility. So I would have had to live in India, and I chose not to
Fascinating.
do that. I mean, my family's here. I don't want to go and live in India when my family's here.
I think it's a big, I have heard also about medical tourism.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know friends that have gone to other countries to get
Mm-hmm.
things like their teeth and their
Mm-hmm.
eyelids done.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Mexico and Canada, not as far as India.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And you have to be careful. You have to know the people that you're going to. It can be less expensive. You can have really good surgeons, but there are some horror stories out there too. People, especially when I've heard a lot about Mexico. Now, I'm not just blaming Mexico, but I've heard a lot of stories about Mexico going down there and then just having all kinds of problems with some of the surgeries. And sometimes you don't know where those kidneys are going, coming, where they're coming from. Sometimes unfortunately, healthy people end up in a bathtub full of ice and they lost their kidney. Somebody took their kidney, and then you might be getting
like a
that
terrible
kidney.
scene from a movie.
Yeah,
That really
yeah,
happened.
yeah, yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
scene
it
from a
can.
movie for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So sometimes you don't
Wow.
know where those kidneys have come from. They might
Hmm.
tell you stories. So, I'm not saying that's how it always is. but you better know what you're doing, and you're just not trying to go for medical tourism because it's cheap.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because you get a new kidney and you need care for the rest of your life.
Yes, yes.
Do you have
I'm
to
a year
take a
and a half
handful
out.
of pills? Do you
Oh
have to
yeah,
take a lot
lots of pills all the time. hmm
so
For the
your
rest of
body
my
doesn't
life.
reject it?
hmm
Mm,
Yeah.
wow.
Yep. Yep. hmm
I guess that's the future, right? And I mean, it seemed like a weird idea when I was a young kid. I think organ
hmm
transplants
hmm
happened, like when was the first one? In the 60s or maybe earlier than
Yes.
that?
In
So
the 60s.
1960s,
Hmm
that's not that many years back.
No, it's
80,
not.
85 years ago, we started transplanting organs.
Well,
And
I know that's for kidneys. I don't know about other organs, but I know that's for kidneys. It was around in the
yeah,
60s. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a newfangled idea that we
hmm
can replace our
hmm
body parts.
hmm
And I suppose
hmm
in the future, like if we were time travelers coming back into the future time for us, it'd be like, oh, of course, you get a new this, you get a new that, give you a new arm, whatever. There'll be
Well, it's
parts that they
interesting.
can
We
give
don't
us.
know. Yeah. I
No,
mean, maybe it's 3D. Maybe it's a pig kidney.
yeah,
Maybe we're going to learn how to regenerate because there's animals that can regenerate body parts. Maybe we'll learn how that process goes. Who knows what's going
right,
to happen in the future?
right. Oh, I love the idea.
Hmm.
They just like put a little piece in and it would just grow inside of you.
Who knows?
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone's listening and they're like, oh, Beth's my gal. I need to talk to her. I will put information in the show notes so you can
Okay.
find her.
hmm
And is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we click off of this
That
podcast?
there's always hope. Remember that there's always hope in
Even
life.
if you need a kidney, there's always
Yes.
hope.
Yes.
Even if you have
Yes.
chronic disease, there's
Yes.
always hope.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, bless you, Beth, for all the work you do in the world.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. But you can find me so many different ways. I own a company called thecreativelifebydesign.com. And I've
Okay.
created my life by design, and I can help you create your life by design, your design. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a life coach. I've written 3 books about my experiences. They're on Amazon. And the flip side of that is I'm an artist. And I have a line of clothing from my art that's called wearable art, which is
Mm.
really, really fun. It's very unique. And I use my art to help people heal. So I intertwine a lot of the things that I'm passionate about in my healing process with people.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
yeah, you can email me at beth@thecreativelifebydesign.com. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and all these kind of places, but I'm quite sure you'll put a lot of that information out there
I
so
will.
people can connect with me. And I would love to talk to anybody and support you. Yeah,
Good. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye
this
for
has
now.
been fabulous. Bye.
Mm.